Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Center of Excellence in Migration and Global Studies Teleseminar. We actually started in March, as most of us know. Thank you for joining us back, Professor Moniolua. So we started in March, and we are in July. For previous editions, please visit YouTube, visit the CEMGS WhatsApp group, visit the Telegram group, so that you can, have a sense of what we have been doing. I should also report that we have the first quarterly report. This center has made it mandatory to give a quarterly report to the Vice Chancellor. And as soon as our website is up and running, that is, we're migrating from the web page hosted by the university to our own website. You can also download and read about what we've been doing since we started in March. We are contemplating starting in August from 10 a.m. or we maintain our 11 a.m. Some people called, and that is why I'm making it open. You can privately chat me or text me, so just give an affirmative response to that. August presentation is building up. We have 2 papers already, and I should also alert you that we will, by His grace, be having new fellows. New fellows we've recommended, and it has been approved. We have associate fellows that will be joining us, senior fellows that will be joining us. But more importantly, is the professorial distinguished fellow. It will be a monthly that will join us. I told you, Professor Obejele, please do not share anything. I don't know what is going on over there. You're sharing media stuff that we should not even be projecting in an academic environment. Prof, please do not share. Whoever is helping you at that end, we've discussed this. You don't share. The host will share, and you've just distracted me. Kindly do not share, please. Thank you very much. What was I saying? So we'll be having a professorial fellow joining us, and every month we have them in residence to share with us their distinguished knowledge. It's like they take us through the line. It's a kind of what I call biographical pedagogical discourse. The scene of biography, whether in migration or in global studies, is becoming very, very important. We do not do that much. And I believe this weekend, a great icon of Nigerian national traditional king, educated, and what have you, was celebrated by Dawn. That is the former Oni of Ife. So such things we're supposed to, and that is what some of these selected distinguished professors, some are emeritus professors or emerita, they will be sharing with us, and I believe we can learn a lot from them. Let me round up this my announcement to inform you that the center will also be accepting revised presentations presentations that has been presented, papers that have been presented before for occasional papers series. You will get what I'm projecting right now through the email, through the WhatsApp group, and through the Telegram group. We will be starting in earnest the occasional paper series. That will be peer review. They will be peer review. And then you can see the format that we want you to follow. We will also be accepting manuscripts in what we call the Migration and Global Studies book series, okay? We will not charge you for your intellectual properties. I retried, I have never paid to publish, even when I was a young scholar or teacher at LASU or College of Education, Jalingo, in what used to be Gongola State. I have never paid, and I do not believe in paying. I believe in the fact that we must source for that alternative means of getting things done, appreciating. When you submit a manuscript, we will not charge you. When you submit your revised paper, for those that are presented on this platform for the occasional papers, we will not charge you, but we will do everything possible to we are on what we supposed to be focusing. At this point, let me welcome Professor Doris, our presenter for today. She is a professor of English and linguistics, but more importantly, she's one of our front leaders at National Open University of Nigeria. At the National Open University of Nigeria. And she'll be speaking to us about a distinguished personality that has written so much about Africans in France from a fictional perspective. Mademoiselle Dioum, if I'm saying her name right, is currently a professor at the University of Strasbourg, where she lives. And she has published so many fictional novels. And the subject of discussion today is one of those novels. Professor Doris Obeje is also the Dean of the Faculty of Arts, National Open University of Nigeria. And I've tried to project this PowerPoint, and somebody is just either messing with us. But Prof, screen sharing has failed to start. Please try again. Okay. Professor Obeje, please go ahead and then start. You speak to your PowerPoint while we try to project again, to share the PowerPoint. Thank you very much. Prof, if you are hearing me, unmute yourself. Let me see. He's a professor of French. Yeah, don't worry. She's in language. Somebody just told me she's a professor of French. Where are you? I'm trying to unmute you. There you go. You've been asked to unmute yourself, Prof.
I have.
Professor Doris. So please unmute yourself and speak. You have. Thank you, ma'am. So go ahead while we battle with the technical itch. Do not try to share. Please tell your kids not to share. I try to share. Somebody is messing with what I'm doing here.
No,
Thank you, ma'am.
It's not us. It's not us. Good morning, everybody. I saw Professor Sogolo, so I must doff my hat for him, especially because he's emeritus and then he's also from my faculty. I'm happy to have you here. Thank you, authority of the Migration Center. Thank you, Professor Tijani. And thank you for every colleague here present to share with me I want to remind you that this paper is work in progress, and every contribution you make would be useful. This morning, we're talking about moving the narrative, and we want to view this narrative. We're viewing it from the writing of Fatou Dioum. Sorry, Fatou Dioum, D-I-O-M-E. I'm not sharing anything, so it's not from my end. However, what is the narrative that has been on ground? The narrative has been on the migrant, the person who is migrating from one place to another. Today, we want to talk about the person that is left behind. If somebody who is close to me, my child or whoever, moves away from where I am living, what happens to me? What is my thought? We hope to look at this, number one, through Fatou Dioum's book, which is called Celle qui attend. Like Prof was corrected, I speak French, I'm Francophile, and my studies is in French language, even though it's in the literatures, but it's in French language. So Celle qui attend, that is the women, the persons that are left behind, that are waiting behind after the migrant has left. And so the limit or the limitation is that we're going to work on the women in Celle qui attend, Fatou Dioum's book. And we want to do that through socio-criticism, the thematic theory, and the feminist theory. When we look at the socio-criticism, when we want to look at society, the impact of literature on society. And what is this impact? According to Stendhal, a French writer who wrote Le Rouge et le Noir, I think that's the red and the black. I don't know if there's an English version, but I read it in French. According to this author, when you look at literature or the novel, let's take the novel, it is a mirror of the society. A lot of my students have cited this citation. It's a mirror of the society. What does a mirror do? When you reflect it, it shows you what you're showing on. If you stand in the mirror and you have a big tummy, it will show your big tummy. It will make it slim, although there are special effects on such mirrors. So we're looking at the novel, Fatou Dioum's novel, as a mirror of the society. We're also looking at it from the thematic point of view. What are the themes that have characterized her book? And of course, we're talking about the women. That's why we're adding the feminist theory. Who is Fatou Dioum? Fatou Dioum is a Senegalese author who was born in the post-independent period. She got married to a French person, but her in-laws did not like the marriage. And after she had moved to France, she abandoned, or she was abandoned by the husband. So she's alone in Strasbourg. It's not Strasbourg, it's Strasbourg. And she's there today, and she's writing from outside Africa. That is why it is not wrong for us to join Jacques Chevrier in considering her writing as migritude. Migritude, a migritude writer is a writer who is writing from outside, and it's a coinage of writing from outside and writing as a migrant. So she's a migrant and she's writing from outside, and she's a Black person. That makes it migritude. And like I said, her writing supports this fact that there are people or writers who have moved out of Africa and are writing things that have to do with Africa. They have not forgotten their home continent or their home countries. They are still writing. Now, according to Jacques Chevrier, migritude is a coinage, or it's a neologism, which is from negritude, the identity, the Black identity, and immigration. And migritude, we want to say for this presentation, is beyond the Francophone writer. Most times we talk about it from the Francophone point of view, but you see that a lot of writers have gone out. One very particular writer that catches my attention, and I will talk about her one of these days, is Chimamanda Adichie. She has written so many books from outside the country. writing about Nigeria, her hometown. And I call her migratory because she's Black and she's writing from outside. Now, when you look at the migratory writer, what is he concerned or she concerned about? She's concerned, or he's concerned, and in this case, the identity crisis. Who am I? Am I Nigerian or African, or am I? And that's why you have people claiming two nationalities. You have people who say they are Nigerians. When they're traveling, when you go to the airport and you see them, they are carrying two passports. And then you begin to wonder what is happening, one red, one green. Then, so when the identity crisis, they don't really know where to fit in or where they're accepted. If they come to Nigeria or Africa, we say, this Oyibo person is here. And then alienation is one of the things that faces the migratory writer. Alienation, why? You find out that where he or she would be the person, the writer, you see that he's not really accepted or he's viewed with hostility. That is not always the case, but that is the case in most cases. And then you have isolation. Because they are isolated, they don't have people, like if I want salt, I knock on my neighbor's door and say, please give me salt. They don't have that experience because you find out that outside, even the African is hostile or suspicious of the African. So for the migratory writer, there's a lot of hostility, there's a lot of isolation, or solitude. And then the migratory writer doesn't shut his eyes to what is happening in his home country. He looks at political issues at home. For example, you look at the last election in Nigeria, a lot of people were focusing on what was happening, giving us suggestions as who we should vote for. So that is what makes the migratory writer. He writes, he's not in his country, but he's writing from wherever. It could be in Africa, writing about Africa, like he could be in Senegal, writing about Nigeria. He could be in Cote d'Ivoire, writing about Nigeria, or something like that. But basically, the migratory writer is not in the place that he's writing about. Now, like I said, the book of interest is Se13. And when you are looking at it, the book was written in French, and to the best of our knowledge, there is no English version. But I prefer to work with the French version because sometimes you are suspicious of translations or interpretations, and then you prefer to translate if you know the language. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. And like I said, to the best of our knowledge, we don't know if it's been translated. But remember that our essence or our emphasis is placed on those that you leave behind when you migrate. Now, Se13 is a story of two mothers and two wives. These two wives are married, and you find that the husbands, Issa and Lamin, are the migrants who went to Spain to try their luck. And one of the reasons, according to Se13, the author exploits or explores a lot of reasons for migration. But the three issues that come to mind some of our thematic trends are poverty, migration, and polygamy. Now, poverty, when you look at poverty, what are you trying to say? You don't have enough. One of the examples was when Aram, one of the mothers, you will meet them, one of the mothers went to the shop, to the grocery store, to beg for credit that she should feed her family. And the man was quite nasty to her, talking to her anyhow. When is this thing going to end? When is this poverty, or when is this credit going to end? Anyhow, he gave her. And there are so many evidences of poverty. You find that a case where Issa was fishing for a living, and what he was harvesting or what he was fishing was not even enough to feed the family. And there are many mouths. Issa's elder brother, Lamin's elder brother had died in the water as a fisherman, leaving behind two wives and plenty children, just as it can be normally with us. You find that The mother had to inherit those children. And so that's Aram, she had nobody to depend on, and she had to keep the children. And she had to look for ways of feeding the children, knowing that also her husband is physically challenged. So he was not in the position to be able to take care of the family. And this poverty influences a lot of people in Africa, which made Aram's friend Bunya try to convince her that they should find a way for their children to migrate, to go to Spain, because they have the experience that when people leave and go to other countries, they do well. So that is where the migration is, and that is where we are going to emphasize on. Apart from migration, there is also polygamy. Don't be surprised that with the state of hunger, people still marry. Of course, there are people who can afford 10 wives, who can afford to take care of 10 wives. But there are people, I know somebody who married a second wife, and he was always begging me for money. And I asked him, you married a second wife. That means you don't need my small money, because I am alone, so I cannot give you to be feeding the public. So the third theme that we see that jumps to the eyes is polygamy. Like I said, our emphasis is on migration amongst the themes that we identified. Migration. And simply defined, not looking for any complex way of defining it, we say migration is movement to a new location, usually in search of more favorable conditions. This is a human phenomenon that has existed since time. And maybe to give it a documented definition, we can say, according to Gerald Connu, he's a French author, he says, migration, I will say it in French and I will interpret. Le fait pour une personne de se déplacer d'un pays dans un autre et d'y séjourner. The fact that, or the phenomenon where somebody moves from one country to another with the intention of remaining there. Two things come to my mind as we look at this. Relocation. The person relocates. He relocates or she relocates from one place to another with the intention of staying in the place. And this relocation could be internal or international. When we say internal, it's like a lot of us are migrants. We have moved from our different places. And I know that recently, many people moved from Lagos to Abuja. We have moved from different places, from the villages to the towns, from the towns even to the villages. And sometimes this migration could be temporary or permanent. Temporary meaning that you want to just stay for two years or 1 year or number of time. And then permanent meaning you want to stay there forever, ever after. It could also be gender. It could also be because of your profession. Sometimes adverts come out and they say they are looking for teachers who are of this caliber. You have to leave where you are to another person. But in this case, we're talking about international, the international kind of migration. And like I said, I think I repeated this slide, why people migrate, which also can be found in Fatou Dioum's book. We're limiting ourselves to this book, to Se13, and we said that the reasons why people move, poverty, and I forgot to talk about peer pressure. Fatou Dioum also shows the picture of Aram, who had to be pressurized or who had to be convinced that she should allow her only remaining son to move from Senegal to Spain. And they were going to do this illegally by boats. And we know what this entails. We'll come to that. And of course, there are other social reasons. Now, when we look at the effects of migration, what are the intentions? The person is moving because things, in this case, moving in Se13, moving to Spain because they think that life might be better. Now, the first thing is that these are clandestine or illegal migrants. They went by boat. A lot of the times we hear through media of death, of horrible things, of slavery, modern day slavery that happen. And that risk is there. So when you are left behind at home, you are thinking, is my loved one safe? Is he safe? What are the risks involved? What if he falls inside the water? What if he dies inside the water? Now, that one finishes, you overcome. What of the financial implication? You find out that when Issa and Lamin, the two characters, when they got to Spain, they had to do what a lot of young Africans do. They had to share whatever they got between taking care of themselves for male prostitution or sending to their family in Africa. They had to, and they had to look good to be tempting to older women who were available. And that was the challenge they had with the financial implication. What happens is that if you get the money, what if it's not enough to pay rent? What if it's not enough to look good? And then you don't have change to send to the family. What if life there is expensive? That was the kind of experience or financial implication they had. Sometimes they were able to send money to their loved ones in Senegal. However, sometimes it was very difficult. Then in the book Selke Atoned, some of the people that were left behind, Aram. Who is Aram? Aram is the mother of Lamin. She lost her first child. And he left her with a wife, two wives, and some children. Now the wives had to leave to their parents, or they left to their family, leaving behind the children, leaving behind the responsibility of taking care of those children. And it was hard for Aram to persuade or to even allow the thought of her son moving to Spain. It was very hard. Now, for her, the effect of migration is the heartache. She is at the risk of losing her son, and she was afraid. Now, another person was Bunya. Bunya is Aram's friend, and Issa's mother. For her, that was how they were going to make it. So for the people that are left behind, what you think of is, this time, the lace that I couldn't wear, when my son goes to Spain, I will be able to wear it. The couscous I couldn't eat. Now that my son has gone to Spain, I will eat it. Then Kumba. When these young men were going to go, their mothers thought it fit to get them married. So Kumba was Issa's wife. And when Issa went to Spain, he left her behind with pregnancy. But when he got to Spain, he got married to a Spanish woman. Like we know, most times the migrant is forced to marry so that he can keep himself. And that was one of the advice he was giving. He said, you look for one old Spanish woman and marry her. And unfortunately, this woman knew what she wanted, so she held him. She knew her mind, so she held on to him. And she knew how to make him remain. So that anytime he came back to Senegal, he came as a visitor. And then Kumba was there. She gave birth, abandoned by a husband who had gone out, and she didn't know what to do. Now she was like house girl to Bunya, Issa's mother. And for her, it was heartbreaking. The question of infidelity came in. Who was infidel? Who was unfaithful? It was, in this case, it was Issa. An infidelity that could happen within the sexes. Because in the last case that we see, Daba was the wife that Aram married for Lamin. Daba was girlfriend to Lamin before he left. And 1 year, 2 years, Lamin didn't come back. And in Pidgin Parlance, they say, body no be wood. And she exercised that body no be wood. And another parlance is that it's when you are caught that you are a thief. She got caught because she got pregnant. So she got pregnant. And when these migrants were going to come back, she was afraid. However, very many ways. For Kumba, she was abandoned, which is one of the effects that migration has, a feeling of abandonment. How many people do we know today that have gone out of their countries, that have gone out of their continents, that have gone out of whatever. We're talking about international, that have left their surrounding and they have abandoned their loved ones because life is no longer the same. If you have a loved one who goes to America and comes back to Nigeria, you'll be speaking different languages. When my little nephew talks to me, I say, please I tell my sister, please tell your son to speak English, the one that I understand. And that is how it is so far in Se13. And like I said, when Lamin came back to Daba, of course, he was disappointed because Lamin somehow had betrayed him. Lamin was pushed by her family and she went and serviced her body, excuse me to use that language, and she got pregnant. She had a baby girl. But fortunately for her, even as Lamin came back, Daba showed him the child. She was afraid to come before him. But Lamin opened his mind, adopted the baby, and married Lamin properly. When I say properly, what they had was the Islamic wedding where you invite people, just the imam, and you give him some kola nuts. And then when he came back, he decided that he was going to marry her properly. Now, what is the message that this book, Se13, what does it portray for our young people? When they leave, of course, it's not only the young people. Even me, I can think of migrating. But will I actually find out what I want? Can you imagine that there are many of our contemporaries who are outside, who you have to send money to because they don't have? Never mind this coronavirus period and IPPIS period where our finances are laughable. But imagine that in the past, just in the immediate past, you had to send money to your children, you had to send money to your friends, you had to send money to your relations. What message do you think we're passing? And do you think that when you move, you indeed find the golden fleece, whatever the golden fleece is? There's a lot of emphasis, and now is one of them, making the emphasis on entrepreneurship. A lot of young people are thinking, what can I do that I can be an employer instead of an employee? Gone are those days when we used to think of government will take us for jobs, government will do that. Now we're thinking, how do I do this? And then by the time the business starts expanding, you begin to think of how you can employ. Now, what hope does international migration offer our children? We see children, look at Black Lives Matter. Look at what is happening. A lot of people are being killed either by hostility or whatever. A lot are into drug addiction. What kind of message do we have for our young people concerning those who are left behind? What are we thinking of how they feel? Are we thinking of the challenges they go through? Are we thinking of them at all? It's not just finance, emotional, the challenges. What are those challenges that they go through? Like I said, this paper is a work in progress. And I actually will appreciate every suggestion that I will get today. And I'm happy to have been able to overcome this challenge of presenting this paper online. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Prof, for yielding so much time today for us to deliberate and ask questions and make comments. Please, you limit your comments or questions to 30 seconds, maximum 1 minute. And of course, maybe henceforth, I've just gotten something here from the VC, and I really appreciate this. So we will use that model because we're having challenges today, despite all the prep since Saturday with Prof. And Zoom just notified us that sharing content is kind of technically difficult today. But in any case, we have 25 minutes or so. It's 11:31. I'm seeing, I've seen 2 people thus far. Professor Emeritus Sogolo. I've seen the Vice Chancellor, Professor Adamu. And I've seen, I was seeing a hand up. Is it Dr. Jack Ejembi? We are going to follow in that order. If you are not posting to me, just raise up your hand while I scroll through. Yes, we will post this broadcast, live broadcast on YouTube, on the web address on WhatsApp. The VC just shared with us that the university has that component. Thank you very much, sir. So far so good, Professor Emeritus Sogolo, the Vice Chancellor, Professor Adamu, Mr. Jack Ejembi. Who else? I can't see any other hand. Okay, I think I'm seeing, is it Professor Ogunduwole? In that order, please just you follow. I'm going to unmute those people that I'm talking about. Professor Ogunduwole, who else am I seeing? Okay, we can start with Professor Emeritus. Please go ahead, sir, while I unmute. I will unmute or ask you to unmute yourself since I muted all of you. And then at the end of the questions or comments, Professor Doris can respond. Please unmute yourself. Those people have been trying to unmute you. I ask you to unmute yourself. Professor Sogolo, please go ahead, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman. First of all, I want to congratulate my Dean for this very brilliant presentation. I don't read French nor speak French, but I still have an idea of the main point of the presentation. I found something very interesting about the presentation, that aspect that touched on negritude. Negritude, I don't know the pronunciation in French, but it's part of our discussion in philosophy. It has to do with the challenge of identity. Challenge of identity, particularly in the colonized experience of Africa. And it was, I think, Loposengo who really pioneered the idea, namely that the African was faced with this challenge of identity in his or interaction with the colonized culture. But then, you know, the interesting thing is that it drew a difference between the Francophone culture or colonized experience and the non-English speaking, the English speaking experience. For the French, the colonial, goal was that of absorption, trying to assimilate, integrate the African and make him a French person. Whereas in the case of the English-speaking experience, it was to interact and exploit as much as possible, but not to make the African an Englishman. That was one of the points that was raised in this negritude, the philosophy of negritude, as we used to call it. But I found something very interesting about this presentation. The urge to go out was mainly driven by a material quest, not necessarily the quest to change culture. And it appeared that most of the experiences were limited to the personalities that were involved. I wish I could read some of these novels and understand exactly what they are, but I find it very interesting. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Emeritus Sogolo. Before the next speaker speak, I want Professor Doris to also think about the connection, if any, between the early Senegalese writers of fiction, people like Aminata Sofor, Mariam Abba, Sheikh Amido, and then see whether there is any connectivity or not between the old guard and the new guard that this person represents, that is Fatou represents. Also the issue of gender, religion, and then the connection between this particular work and our maiden work that has been described as a magnum opus, that is The Belly of the Atlantic. How do you connect that novel, our first novel, The Belly of the Atlantic, with this particular one? Thank you very much. I think the next speaker is, I'm not sure whether it's, I think it's the Vice Chancellor, Professor Adamu. You have the floor, sir. Yes, sir. Oh, I asked you to
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much. I have unmuted myself. I'm not mute.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
The old man who spoke before you is too old to understand some of these novels. He's just too old. He won't understand it at all. And he is an Englishman, because you have never. I only saw him. I saw him only dressed once in Urhobo dressing, but otherwise he's always tie a handkerchief and so on. So he has been absorbed by the British. He is English. And I will also, while commenting on Obaichi's paper, I also look at your own paper comments. I don't think Obaichi is interested in negritude as such. She has mentioned a word that I have never come across before in my life, migritude. I think it is a fantastic, beautiful concept. And it is about identity of a migrant, when you go outside where you are. Whereas negritude is a protest movement against absorption by the colonialists, French colonialism. But migritude, regardless of whether you are Francophone, Lusophone, or Anglophone, is you are a migrant and your identity is being absorbed. And as regular members of this forum know, I've always been an advocate of integration. So what I would have loved Doris Obaiji to do is to look at the relationship between the possibilities of integration and migritude as a philosophical as well as identity concept, that I am a migrant, but I want to maintain my identity. I want to marry 4 wives, but I'm now in a situation where the society does not allow me to marry 4 wives, even though I'm a Muslim and I can do that. So do I give up this luxury of having 4 wives, or misery, if you like, because having even more than even 1 wife is a miserable thing. But do I give up this? So it is the migritude concept should go beyond just simply looking at Patou's novel, but also looking at other people like Hebron Habila. Hebron Habila migrated, he's a writer, and moved to another place. Chinua Achebe migrated to another place, to the United States. His daughter is still there. And I can't even pronounce her name. The one that did this half of yellow moon or half of yellow sun, Chima, whatever, something like that. One Igbo girl that everybody is thinking she's a hot shit or something like that, which I don't think. So what they are talking about Africa, but they are not talking from the anthropology of experience. I'm a post-structuralist anthropologist. And people are not insects that you study under a microscope and then write about them while you are living in your comfortable flat in Manhattan. People are human beings. So all of these, their perception of Africa and their comments on Africa and the bad things that are happening in Africa is based on the media. just like the Boko Haram insurgency literature that is now making rounds in the world. Suddenly they are experts on Boko Haram, but they have never seen slit throats. They have never seen bits of human beings blown up by IEDs. They have never seen that. But they go on the internet and get a lot of data, write it and take it to Oxford University Press, Cambridge University Press, Blackwell or Indiana University Press, and they get published and suddenly they are experts. But they have never been to Africa. So how can you, as a migritude writer, begin to comment on what is happening in Africa when you're not there? That is why I said I'm a post-structuralist anthropologist, because what they're doing is the typical standard structuralist anthropology of looking at anthropological societies from a distance. That is what migritude is. They are trying to identify themselves, but at the same time they are trying to alienate themselves. So I find it contradictory, because in her narrative she said that this guy is married to a French woman, and then he went up somewhere and married a Spanish woman, forgetting about the fact that he had a wife back at home. So what is she trying to do? First, did he marry the Spanish woman because he wants to get a Spanish passport? Because I know somebody in the United States who married a Caribbean woman who is an American so that he can get a green card. And after 10 years, when he became eligible for citizenship, he told her to go away. She said, but I love you. He said, fine, I love you too, but we have to part. So he asked for a mail order bride. That's what we call the mail order bride. You just simply send a letter home, and then they get you a nice timid girl, and then they post her back to you. So the question that I'm asking, the question that I'm asking Obaiji is, first of all, you need to recontextualize the concept of migritude within the larger framework of writers who have left Africa and then have gone to and settled somewhere else. Need to talk about the anthropology of experience, and finally, I know my time is up. Finally, the relationship between negritude and migritude, and the clear division between the two. Clear, so that you don't have people like that old man. So what is his name? So Gulu. You don't have that old man trying to talk to you about something called philosophy. I feel that nobody will really want to study. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I will yield later on to Professor Sugulu to respond, but not now.
By the way, I'm sorry. One more comment. Sorry, sir. One more comment.
Okay, sir.
All our studies, all our seminars so far tend to look at the West, from Europe upwards. So that is why I sent you a YouTube link of somebody called Visual Poet, Sidibe. His name is Sidibe. He actually lives in the United States. But what he does is he records African experiences in the Middle East. For instance, he was able to identify Black Indians in India who are Black, of African origin. Mm-hmm. The same thing with Iran, the same thing with Iraq, the same thing with Jerusalem. I mean, this guy deliberately seeks out Black immigrants in other places. And these guys are not immigrants. As far as they are concerned, they are citizens of those countries. So I have sent the link to video, to YouTube. Just if you have time, take a look at it and see alternative experiences. I mean, don't let's look at just America and England, but let's look at alternative experiences in other places. What about Black people in New Zealand? What about Black people in Australia? You know, the Aborigines. What about Papua New Guinea? So we need to a little bit go beyond. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Professor Ogunduwole, you can speak. After that, we have Dr. Olani, Akim Olani. I've asked you to unmute yourself. If you are hearing me, unmute yourself. So, Professor Ogunduwole, please.
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can.
Okay. The correct pronunciation is Ogundawole.
Ogundawole. Okay, sir.
Ogundawole. Yes. My interest is in this, the concept of migritude and negritude. Negritude, no doubt, is the reaction of those Africans studying within the system that has been deliberately formulated to transform them into French people, culturally and otherwise. That's deliberate effort from the system of miseducation in France or extended France territory. But migration, these are deliberate individual seeking greener pasture. If they left in order to seek improvement of their material well-being, it's expected they should live according to the circumstances and conditions of the environment they find themselves. That is, just as it said, when in Rome, you live like the Roman. Now, why suddenly do we expect them to be much different from the deliberate effort? Because the system of education in France and extended France territory has to work within the program of evaluate the assimilation program. In England, in English territory, it wasn't even different. Although Professor Golo said it was not pronounced, but when you read our textbook in primary and secondary school, in English textbook, you see features of England, London, and English names are more featured. I've not seen any English textbook during the colonial period that will feature more Ade, Ibikunle, or Kolawole, rather than John and other names. So basically, there is no much different, but except that this issue of self-enslavement because of the poverty situation in Africa is what we need to face squarely. So the question I wish to ask the presenter is, how will she relate the current movement, migritude, if I use her word, resulting in the death of several thousands in Mediterranean, and the situation in Africa? How can we put an end to this migritude?
Thank you very much, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I think your last comment also bring back to the platform the question about the windrush that a colleague of ours have always asked for us to dissect. Can we also integrate this with the windrush? People coming on board that ship and they were refused to disembark. I think Dr. Rekia Maman is with us, and maybe have just spoken her mind. The next person to ask question or comment, please make it short. I don't think you are as old as these people that have spoken, from what I'm seeing. Unmute yourself, Dr. Lani, and then Mr. Ijembi. I don't see any other hand. So make it 10 seconds, 20 seconds. Please unmute yourself. Dr. Lani, I've unmuted you, but you have to also do your own part. What about Ijembi? I've asked both of you to unmute yourself.
Yes, yes.
Okay, go ahead. Okay.
Go ahead. Okay, Jamie.
Yeah, Mr. Olani.
Okay, sir.
Go ahead. Dr. Olani,
good morning, sir. Good morning, my able professors. I must commend the presenter for the job well done. During the course of the presentation, the prof made mention of risk of migration in the global world. My question goes thus: to what extent can the migration risk be minimized to the advantages of the migrants? That's my own question.
Thank you very much. Maybe they should go for H1 visa, as Australia is currently asking. You know, their government has sponsored them, trained them. Let's give them H1 visa and use their intellectual property for zero in terms of 50,000 Australian, dollars. But I'll allow Prof to respond to that. Mr. Ijembe, you are the last person so that Prof can respond. Please go ahead, sir. Mr. Ijembe. Okay, Dr. Adams, if you still want to ask your question, go ahead. Dr. Adams? Okay, Professor Doris, you can go ahead, please. Respond. I've unmuted those people that have called, but they did not unmute themselves. They have to unmute themselves. Oh, Professor Doris, did I unmute you? Prof, please respond to those comments and questions. Professor Doris, you have the platform. Professor Doris? I've unmuted you. You know, maybe you're...
Yes, thank you very much. I must thank everybody for their contributions, but there is a misunderstanding of my paper. Maybe I was not clear because I'm conscious of the time, and I was conscious of so many things, but in the text I wrote, the emphasis is not on migration. The emphasis is on those left behind after migration. What happens? I'm not the one going to Spain. I'm not the one going to Senegal. I'm the one remaining at home in Nigeria. What are the challenges or what are the experiences and which I tried to bring out and rushed over it? But I will still answer some of the reactions. And when I talk about migritude, is not a moving or like negritude, is a coinage between negritude and migration. A coinage, a neologism, I don't know how to call it in English, neologism between migration or migration and what? And well, it's not the moving of the migritude is a coinage, and it's supposed to be people who have moved. They could be in Zaria, they could be in Kaduna, they can be in Spain, they can be in France, but they are writing about their home front. And I said, migritude is that act of being outside and taking issues. But don't forget that my emphasis is on those that were left behind. That's the title of the book, Sell Key Aton. Those that you are leaving as you are going home with all your, as you're going out with all your promises. So that having been said, yes, I agree that negritude, that's the French pronunciation, negritude is the identity or the cry or the advocacy for my identity as a Black person, as a woman, as a Black person. But I am saying migritude is a coinage between the two, the negritude and migration. So when I move out and I'm writing about so many things, of course you understand, not because I don't want to join them or I don't want to be like them, but because there's nostalgia. There are things that are different from what I'm used to in the context that I come from. So don't forget, the word is migritude, and that is what it means. Then another thing is, when you talk about the connection between the first guard or the earlier guard and the later guard of writers, Senegalese writers. When we teach literature, French literature, we talk about those first guard as classics. And you see that many of them wrote, they wrote as migritude writers too, because somebody like what's his name? Sam Ben-Usman and Aminata Sofal, some of them were in their countries. Like Aminata Sofal is in Senegal. But somebody like Sam Ben-Usman, who wrote Le Bout de Bois de Dieu and Le Docker Noir, he was in France at the time he wrote. But they were very active in their politics. But their theme, I'm just looking at, not at migration, but at the person that you are leaving behind. Don't forget that. It's not migration for me. It's the person that you are leaving behind when you leave. Like I have left a place to come to Abuja, for example. How are those people I left behind? What are their reactions? All I did was take some of the reactions, the themes related to migrating, and to tell what happened. Now, whether there's a connection between the two of them. In this one, I'm looking at Selki Aton. Somebody like Sam Ben-Usman wrote all kinds of things from the Marxist point of view. He wrote poverty, corruption, blah, 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 on from the Marxist point of view. And there are so many people. You take Aminata Sofal, for example. She says that she's not a feminist. However, as a feminist, I would say that some of her arguments are feminist. So they have an author. Remember that an author doesn't come and say, I am writing from this perspective. It is you, the writer, the reader. It is you, the critic, that decides, this person belongs to this place, this line of thought. So it is we that have decided that what we want to talk about today is Fatou Keita, Fatou Dioum, and her opinion about those left behind after you have migrated. And then I thank the VC, if I remember, for his comment. And he said, one of the things, I don't want to mention names because I might not have mentioned the person's name, but one of the arguments is, why do these migrants do all kinds of things they don't fit in? They fit in, but the society sometimes does not allow them to fit in. Like I said, I don't want to sound like a broken record, even though that is not my emphasis, but my emphasis here, let me explain that if I decide to marry a Frenchman because I want to stay, it's because I want to align. It is not my desire to get married to a white person. But I do certain things because I want to align, because I want to belong, because I want to have, but does the society, take the general African, for example. I am here, but the typical Gwari person will say, I am from so and so place. You know, even in the north, where in the far north where I come from, you will say this person is a Gwari person. This person, and that is already isolating the person. You do not say, I don't want to. And then even me today, how many of us, we live in Abuja, but we say state of origin. Nigeria still asks for state of origin. So the society sometimes does not allow you to align, does not allow you to belong to where you want to be. And that is the issue with the migrants. Even though I said it is the left behind that I'm talking about. I keep harping on it so that we will not forget. Then, of course, I have explained the issue of negritude. Of course, negritude, you have simply the desire to proclaim my identity as black. As black. Nègre is black in French, nègre. And then the negritude is that I want to show that I'm black. And so most of their poems were, oh, sweet black woman, black this, black that, black that. But like I said, it's a coinage between negritude and immigration. So you see that there's, and then don't mistake the migritude. Migritude is that I am outside. I'm writing about Zaria. I'm not in Zaria, but I'm not in Abuja, and I'm writing about what is happening in Zaria. That is migritude. And that is why sometimes when we talk about certain things, we might not talk about the West. We might not talk, because Fatou Keita is from Senegal, but she herself, as an author, is writing from Spain, from Strasbourg in France. And she's writing about somebody who moved to Spain. And she's writing, as we called her, as a migritude writer. Migritude is the word. I don't know how it's called in English, but I'd rather stay safe in French and say migritude. So now you see that Fatou Keita wrote, she's an African. We're not talking about the Westerners that moved to Africa or to where. We have had migration from that side, but we're not talking about them. We're talking about, and that is when you're analyzing a literary piece of work, I'm concentrating on Se13. And I must look at the perspective of the people that you are leaving behind as you have migrated. And then how can it be minimized, migration? Well, again, that for me normally is for us intellectuals to make our points, and then for the policy makers to hear us and do what we're proposing. And for me, a young person telling my son, don't move to this place, is because I have something better to offer. I have something better to offer. How many times have you traveled out? And everything works. Lights doesn't go off. Right now, I'm using my generator to run my device. So light doesn't go off. Whatever doesn't go off. Parents don't bully you. They don't say you are 10 years old. I'm 50 years old. So that also should be considered. Those things that you are looking for in Sokoto, they're in the Sokoto. Excuse my Yoruba. So that's a Yoruba saying too. You remember that I'm coming from the Department of Languages, so I would say a lot of language things. So when you're looking for something and it's available, why are you good? Nowadays, people are saying, why are you traveling? Why don't you try and do what is outside? That is what we can do, I think. One of the things, begin to reorient our minds. Don't forget, somebody talked about assimilation, and in French it's called le petit français. You want to make the dream of the francophone is to go to France. But you and I, as Anglophones, we don't have that dream. In fact, the typical Nigerian will look for a way of making things easy for him at your detriment. And you find a lot of people moving like that because they think things will be better. But it's not always better. And that is what we have asked. That is it really better? Because where you are, when I'm outside, I behave gently. When I'm at home in Nigeria, I say, I'm in my country. Nobody can do me this. This is my father's land. And that is the opinion that a lot of us have. We need to reorient our minds and say, okay, whatever you want to do, why don't you try to do it there? You find out that people go and wash corpses, and then they're not paid here for corpses. It's just minimum. And they'll probably pay you because it's a hazardous job. So those things that we look for, we can implement them here so that we will not be treated as second-class citizens anymore. And then, okay. And how does, well, when people move at their risk, like these two young men, at their risk, because people die, people are told that they're going to do some work and they go there and become sex slaves. That is one part of migration, which we didn't see in the book. What do we do? It's that change of mind. It's just that change of mind, because I've listened to some of these programs that show this migration, and then you see that people move and they go and they are shocked because what they get there, first of all, they steal your passport from you and all kinds of realities. So it is time for us, let's not change the narrative, but it is time for us to begin to implement those things that we're insisting, that we'll be singing, even in our side, even in our little corner, in our offices. Don't we treat our male children different from our female children? For example, I make my little girl learn how to wash plates. Will I tell my boy to? I had an argument where a young man was staying in my house and he said, women don't play football. And then a woman will leave and go to another country where women are accepted. I don't know if that cough is to tell me that it's time, but I want to say that, don't forget, how does the person left behind think? How does the person fare? That is, most times you find out that the men will go, travel, leave their wives and say, I'm coming back. Do they come back? Some people marry because of passports. We just heard it from the Vice Chancellor. Some people marry because of green cards. Those are realities. But what happens to somebody like Kumba, whose husband married a Spanish to be able to get the green card? She was abandoned. She was betrayed. She was disappointed. And then what happens to Daba, who came back and met his wife? A new wife, he left new from the cellophane bag. He came and met her with a baby. And what's those people that are left behind? What is their feeling? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Doris Obije, for this wonderful presentation and the response to those comments. As I stated before we started this program, that we are calling for papers to be peer-reviewed as part of the occasional paper series, and then the Migration and Global Studies book series. I was thinking I'll be able to project because we have more people now at this point, but unfortunately the Zoom share is still not functioning. But I thank you so much. I thank you for coming, for joining us, for using your data and being a stakeholder. We really appreciate you. We appreciate the support of everyone. And before we round up, the Vice Chancellor would like to say a word with us. For the two deans that just came in, I just saw your message. My apologies, but we'll pass on that comment to Professor Doris. I'm referring to Professor Moniolua, the Dean of Science. She made a comment, and then Professor Ganiat Othman, she also made a comment. But I just want, because we are past 12, and I've been admonished strongly, I don't want to get a red card. The VC can unmute himself. I've allowed you to unmute yourself, sir.
Okay, just a final word. I think this is a wonderful thing. This is the most active center in the university. This is the only place in the entire university where we are all gathering and learning from different angles, from different perspectives. And I would like to congratulate you and everyone else for really making it lively. When I thought of this particular center, I never really imagined that it will blossom as much as it did, because everybody has a comment, whether you are an anthropologist, whether you are a scientist, sociologist, or even if you are unlucky enough to be a philosopher, at least you'll be able to, to be able to chip in. May I suggest that we need to reward those who have made efforts to make this place lively. So maybe you do like Professor Okebukola used to do, present a virtual certificate of honor or of gratitude or whatever it is to all the participants right from the very beginning. And then at the end, before you round up, you call somebody and then say, we would like to deliver this certificate to you for your brilliant presentation, blah, 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 blah. You can design it. Monday knows I and Monday are part of Okebukola's program at LASU. And at the end of every presentation, they reward the person who presented with the certificate. It may not be much, but at least to be appreciated is something. And I'm very, very proud of this, this center, because this is the only place where we have multidisciplinary approaches to everything, and where we learn. Like I've learned this new concept of migritude, and I'm going to start working on it. I like things that are a little bit different from what I know. So I'm a disruptor. I like to disrupt things. So thank you very much for all this. But my comment is, can we think together with your fellows about the possibilities of rewarding those people? We're not giving them any honorarium. After all, they are researchers. This is what their job is. But if we can give them some kind of certificate of recognition or of appreciation for the effort that they have made. Like you said, they use their data. She's using her generator. While we are working on this thing, I had no electricity in my house, and I was worried that this thing will end before the light come back. Then suddenly it came back. So think about it with your fellows, not you alone, but think about it. If it's a good idea, fine. If it's not a bad idea, you can forget it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. the Vice Chancellor for your trust, your support, always. I have no regret accepting this offer, and I thank you for the words of encouragement that is keeping all of us going. Definitely, we will look into that, and then you should, as it is common, see a letter from me for official approval to do that. In fact, we are thinking about that even for the fellows as they complete. And I use this opportunity to thank them, 8 of them that will be running up. Of course, we did something privately, but now that the VC is telling us to also, we will surely do that. The virtual certificate of recognition. Okay. The other thing that I raised, in fact, I should also mention, sir, that you will get a quarterly report. And as of this morning, we have a draft. We just want to perfect it and, get it bind. Once that is done, you'll be getting from March to date, and it will contain all the presentations, comments, questions. We are working on that. And I use this opportunity to thank the staff that you posted to the center. And our situation, apart from the pandemic. And we thank you for appreciating all our efforts. The Lord, in His wisdom, will continue to be with you. I thank each and every one of you for trusting us. August is almost fully booked. Please do send to us your title. I've just gotten from the Dean of Law. I thank you, sir, for joining us. And I'll take the last word from Professor Sogolo. I hope I'm not getting query now for extending this 12 o'clock. My apologies, sir, for extending 12 o'clock. So, as a Yoruba Lagos boy, despite the fact that they believe we don't speak Yoruba or we are Anglophone, we still have that Yoruba culture. So when a professor emeritus or a VC, I've unmuted you, sir, Professor Sogolo. So you have the last word, the mission of the Vice Chancellor.
Thank you very much.
Thank God it's not a university. If it were to be, sorry, sir, if it were to be a university function, I definitely would not, after the VC spoken.
After the VC, nobody else
wouldn't. Yes, sir.
But
yes, sir.
I have the privilege of age to speak after the
yes,
I really want to, yes, I want to say that I did not confuse negritude with megitude. They all have to do with the challenge of identity. One is derived from the other, and even though the two words, I didn't make any, I was not confused about that. But I want to seize this opportunity to congratulate the VC, first for setting up this center, and then secondly, always in every presentation, it speaks and it throws light, it clarifies a lot of things, and I always find myself, thrilled whenever he speaks. And he does so because in spite of his veering into different areas, he is essentially a philosopher. And we have a course in the Department of Philosophy, in African philosophy, and I'm suggesting to him, in fact, we're going to invite him when he finishes as VC to come and do the teaching of that course, because I really find him this vast, more in philosophy than many other areas. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, sir. So that means he will be giving a third professorial chair in the philosophy of African studies. I think I will support that. And as I stated before we started, I said we'll be having 2 distinguished professor, fellowship. I will not mention the names now, but you can take a guess. It will be an honor if the two, approved, accepted, and then you'll be learning more from them when they present or when they are in residence. I thank you again very much. I wish you well. Be safe, maintain the social distancing, ensure that all is well. And then please get to me whether or not you want us to move this to 10 o'clock or maintain our 11 o'clock. The VC said no, 11 o'clock. Okay, it is done. 11 o'clock is good. People, thank you, sir. Yes. And Baba also said 11 o'clock. So please disregard that. Don't get back to me. It's 11 o'clock. Stay blessed, and let me unmute everybody. Do the traditional
Bye-bye.
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 Bye.
Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.